Let's go ahead and get started, and we'll begin with introductions. I'll start with myself. I'm Glenn Young, Clark County Counsel, and in the training room we have Michael. Go ahead.
Good morning, Michael Torres, Clark County Community Services.
Noreen Ibrahim, Clark County Community Services.
And that's it from the training room. So those online, please go ahead and identify yourselves and your jurisdiction or who you're representing. Thank you.
I'll call them out. Rebecca, you want to start with you?
Good morning, Rebecca Royce, Clark County Community Services. I apologize for not being there in person. We are not seeing anything shared for the PowerPoint. Noreen, would you like me to share?
Yeah, go ahead and share.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Chuck Green.
Chuck Green, alternate, City of Ridgefield.
Thank you, Chuck. Elizabeth.
Elizabeth McNanny with Resource Consultants, here to chat about the consolidated plan for HUD.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Joe Walsh.
Good morning, Joe Walsh, City of Washougal.
Thank you, Joe. Matt Cole.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Matt Cole, Mayor of Ridgefield.
Thank you, Mayor. Tracy.
Good morning. Tracy Coleman, Public Works Planning Director, City of La Center.
Thank you, Tracy. Victoria Ferrer. Hi, Victoria. Can you hear us? I see Victoria in the meeting. We are not hearing you, Victoria, if you're trying to talk. We've not seen you unmute. And is there anyone that we've not called out that's in here to identify themselves? And that is everyone, Councilor Young.
All right, great. Let's go ahead and move forward. Item number 2 on the agenda is approval of the March 10, 2025 meeting minutes. Is there any corrections that need to be made? Any suggestions for that? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion for approval.
Yeah, I'll move to approve the March 10th, 2025 meeting minutes.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 And any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Go ahead and move on to item number 3, the draft consolidated plan review. Is that you, Rebecca, or is that Elizabeth?
That'll be Elizabeth,
Okay.
Elizabeth McNanny with our Resource Consultants is going to do an overview of the draft consolidated plan to get feedback by the Urban County Policy Board members. Elizabeth?
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca, and everyone. It is really wonderful to be here with you this morning. Many of you I have likely seen or met over the course of the last few weeks as we have been working with cities within Clark County. And today I'm just going to do kind of a very brief overview of some things we've talked about before, but then dig a little bit deeper and talk a bit about some of the things that we're hearing in the community. So go ahead. So we'll chat briefly about the overview of the consolidated plan. I'm not going to go into this in detail like as we did in the previous meeting when I presented, I believe, in January. And then just talk through some of the needs, goals, and projects that we have identified that coincide with the approved activities that the Urban County Policy Board has reviewed and approved for program year 2025, which starts July 1. And then the next steps and any feedback or information that you would like to have shared or incorporated and anything like that. Yep, go ahead. So the 5-year plan, it's really about broad strategies and goals and objectives. Basically, the big buckets of what you will be doing for the next 5 years, as well as the key data points that sort of drive us there. And then the annual action plan breaks down those buckets of funding, as well as brings in some annual data to really help figure out what the greatest needs are, or the greatest opportunities are in the community for any given year. So the first year action plan is included in the consolidated plan, and there will be 4 additional during subsequent years. Go ahead. Again, core principles are really about benefiting low and moderate income residents and communities throughout Clark County. Participation is key, and we have been out in the community getting survey respondents, as well as just getting a ton of great feedback we'll talk about as we go through here. We've been working with the Continuum of Care Steering Committee, service providers, and we were at the Veterans Advisory Board last week, along with the Housing Authority and other meetings and public engagement at libraries and in different ways throughout the community. And then it's really about leveraging and partners. And you have done a great job of moving projects forward or activities forward that leverage funding from other resources so that you can be strategic and targeted with your investments. Go ahead. And this is just a brief overview, again, of some of the eligible activities that you can do with CDBG because it is the most flexible. And the county does housing rehabilitation and economic development. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And had not been doing public service activities, but may want to look at those in the future. So that will be a conversation with the Urban County Policy Board about moving some public services forward potentially in years 2 through 5 of this plan. Public facilities and infrastructure and administration. And again, there are things that can't be funded, things like maintenance and repairs, and typically purchase of equipment. Go ahead. And just as a reminder, this is not an unlimited bucket of money, of course, but we do anticipate that for program year 2025, with the continuing resolution, funding may stay pretty similar to what was received for this year. And this year, the county received just over $1.5 million for CDBG. 20% can be used for planning and admin, and that typically in Clark County is utilized for administration of these programs. 15% can be used each year for public services. And so it's a limited amount of money that can be utilized for public services in any given year, but it can be really critical. It can be a critical resource to help move forward some of the county's priorities. The home award was just over $500,000, and the administration cap is 10% for home. Go ahead. And the key components are really just about the housing and homeless needs assessment, housing market analysis, the 5-year strategic plan, again, those big buckets, and the 1-year action plan, the smaller buckets. So you have most likely all seen this before as we've been making our rounds. Starts with needs and then goes to goals, and those are in the consolidated plan. Projects are in the annual action plan, and activities are the other side of IDAS, or the reporting system that HUD utilizes as we put together annual activities that are actually what you're doing on the ground. Go ahead. So needs that we have identified, and these are directly related to the needs or the objectives that HUD outlines for these programs. The needs are decent housing, to create a suitable living environment, and to expand opportunities. And this is primarily to benefit low and moderate income residents of Clark County. And the reason we typically use those as needs is, number one, because they do align with the objectives of the programs, which is not a bad thing to do. And number two, the needs they inform goals, but they cover everything that you might be able to do with this funding. And you also don't use them in any other way throughout the consolidated planning or annual action plan process, unlike goals, which are included in the con plan. Go ahead. So the goals that we have identified for this con plan, with the feedback we've received and working with staff, are housing. So this is everything that you do under the housing bucket: support of construction and rehabilitation of housing units, tenant-based rental assistance. So those are more like projects, but the housing goal encompasses pretty much everything that you do under that bucket and under that big bucket. Public facilities and neighborhood improvements. So it's all of those public improvements that typically come before the Urban County Policy Board each year for scoring and award. Parks, sidewalks, sewer and wastewater improvements, things like that. And then public facility renovation and construction is also under that goal. And then economic and asset development, that typically is utilized by the county for micro enterprise assistance as approved by the Urban County Policy Board. Public services, we have put a goal for public services in the consolidated plan. Should the Urban County Policy Board set priorities for public services in years 2 through 5, you can do that to really address some of the critical needs in the community. And then administration, because it has to live somewhere. So go ahead. So how do we break down those projects? How do we break down those goals into projects? This is what will live in the annual action plan. And not every one of these may be in every annual action plan. It depends on what's approved for that year. So it could be preservation and construction of multifamily and single family housing in Clark County. And that can encompass both rehabilitation as well as new construction. And then the tenant-based rental assistance programs that the Urban County Policy Board has supported and is continuing to support, as well as direct home buyer assistance, which would be down payment assistance through home or home buyer assistance through CDBG. Neighborhood improvements and public facilities goal will likely have 2 projects, and everything that happens within those lives under those 2 projects. So neighborhood improvements would be the things that you're looking at when you see parks and sidewalk improvements. The public facility improvements would be rehabilitation or construction activities that would include things like the currently approved for 2025 Bertha's Place remodel. And then economic and asset development goal, a project under that would be the micro enterprise assistance activities that you have approved for 2025. Should you move forward with the public facility goal, that will be in the plan, but you may have projects under that. And a project would likely just be public services to benefit low and moderate income residents in Clark County. And then the activities would be priorities that the Urban County Policy Board approves. So you don't have to accept applications for every public service that could ever be funded with CDBG. The Urban County Policy Board can set clear priorities for the types of projects that it is willing to support under this. And those could include homeless services, domestic violence services, behavioral health services, child care, but it is really up to you to set the priorities for those public services that have the most critical unmet need in the community. And then the administration goal will have, that's where CDBG and Home Program Administration will live. Go ahead. So this is just an example that many of you have seen before in one way or another. Under the need for create a suitable living environment, the goal could be public facilities and neighborhood improvements. The project would be neighborhood improvements, basically, to benefit low and moderate income Clark County residents. And then the activity not included in the plans, because you may have multiple activities, would be a North Parkway Avenue sidewalks activity in Battleground. Go ahead. So some of the things that we are really hearing from stakeholders and survey respondents are around housing. And one of the biggest needs that we're hearing, especially from stakeholders, but this is addressed in multiple ways through survey respondents, is the need to address a continuum to help folks who are in shelter transition to transitional housing or permanent supportive housing and or other permanent housing choices. And greater need for services and shelter for those fleeing domestic violence. Now, we definitely know that housing is a huge issue, especially, really the construction of housing is a big issue across the seaboards, and Clark County is no outlier in this. We see that there's a need for additional affordable, safe, secure, suitable units. And right now, approximately 44% of renters in Clark County are cost burdened or severely cost burdened. And cost burdened is paying more than about a third of your income, and severely cost burdened is paying more than 50% of your income for your housing costs. 23% of homeowners in Clark County are also cost burdened or severely cost burdened. So the need for additional housing is high. And the other thing that we're hearing is as winter shelters close on April 1st or around that time, it is really challenging to find additional options for folks. One of the most heartbreaking things that we're hearing from shelter staff and folks who run shelters is captured in the, I guess, bubble right under the housing bubble, and that is that there are so many complex needs for the unhoused, and the spectrum of housing programs that are serving people struggles to meet those needs. There are examples of shelters receiving people from hospitals with open wounds, and shelter staff is being asked to do medical interventions when they are really not equipped to do that. So some additional capacity around that kind of service could be important. We also have heard really consistently that there's a challenge around affordable, accessible childcare, and especially for low and moderate income households. And we have heard from multiple stakeholders, including some folks at the Veterans Advisory Board last week, that domestic violence service expansion could ensure that more families who are in critical need can receive the assistance that is necessary for them to move forward. So it's not always about shelter per se. It can be about a holistic view for the family and helping them get the services that they need. And healthcare, improved access to behavioral health services has come up many, many times. And low barrier access to healthcare and behavioral health services have come up quite often. Next slide. And what are stakeholders sharing? I want to really tell you the good things that stakeholders are saying in the county too. They are actually telling us that coordination of resources and programs is exceptional. And even though resources remain limited, there is great coordination. There isn't a lot of siloing in the county with resources that are available. People are working together. Agencies and organizations are sharing information. Food access is often cited as a success in Clark County. And that is really such a wonderful thing to hear from stakeholders, that they are saying that access to food, which is so critical, is available to most Clark County residents in need. They also talk about the strong partnerships between county staff and agencies, organizations, other, basically groups, the continuum of care, all the service providers talk about that partnership with the county, and that targeted programs have worked in the county. In 2023, the county did some work with veterans coordination to make sure that correct information was available for homeless veterans, and that those veterans remained unhoused, that they had not moved on to live with family or were otherwise housed. And case management, targeted case management, was available as folks came up that list to really help address their needs. So targeted programs are working because it decreased the number of homeless veterans in Clark County significantly. Go ahead. Next steps are surveys are continuing, and those definitely continue to trickle in. Our stakeholder interviews are pretty well wrapped up, although we have a couple of clarifying interviews that we are continuing to do with folks like the Housing Authority, and then targeted meetings like this one. A final presentation and adoption will be done on May 6th for the County Council, and then submission to HUD will be after that, when we can. We don't know until HUD provides us the amount that will be available for next program year, and we can make any changes necessary in the consolidated plan and the action plan. We cannot submit to HUD. And I would love to have any feedback that you have or any questions. Absolutely would welcome any input.
I have a quick question. So could you explain to us this process, how long we're going to be going through it, how the policy board will be involved with that, and in terms of refining some of the targeted areas and such. And I know that we also had that discussion earlier about, looking at like TBRA versus affordable housing projects, things like that. When are When are we going to be looking at those and kind of working through some of those issues?
I think that some of that happens on an annual basis as you look at the proposed activities that come before the Urban County Policy Board and as you set your priorities. So in 2025, again, the program year that starts on July 1, there are TBRA programs, tenant-based rental assistance. There are also housing programs. So there is a new housing development of 40 units of senior housing in Washougal that came before the policy board. So it's not necessarily an either or, but that is something that on an ongoing basis, the Urban County Policy Board will be setting those priorities. That is, we can tell you there is a great need for housing in Clark County, and that will surprise no one. That is not true in all the areas that we work. I mean, in the Midwest and some other areas, additional housing construction is not the need. But in Clark County, obviously, that is a need as the communities grow. And that is really something that the Urban County Policy Board can look at and set clear guidelines around on an annual basis through this plan.
Okay, so I guess my question is more along the lines of, is that discussion taking place prior to us submitting the consolidated plan, or is that something that we go through after, and the consolidated plan is something a little bit more general?
So the consolidated plan is definitely more general, and the activities, the projects and activities have already been selected for the first annual action plan included with the consolidated plan. So there will be, and those were the activities that were scored and approved by the Urban County Policy Board. So that will happen on an annual basis throughout this planning cycle. Does that answer the question?
Hi, Elizabeth. I'm also going to try to answer it a little bit more. Rebecca, could you go to slide 12? Thank you. Oh, yeah, that's perfect. So I think, and Elizabeth, jump in if I'm wrong. I think that for the purposes of submitting the consolidated plan to HUD, as of right now, by mid-May, which is why it's coming to the council for approval on May 6th, the consolidated plan itself is going to be these general buckets that articulate the high-level needs, also high-level goals, the projects, which are more what will guide what we are soliciting in the annual, our annual solicitations in our RFAs, and then the activities that come out of those solicitations. So what we need now from the Urban County Policy Board, and this is the process prior to submitting the plan, is feedback on the needs, goals, and projects. Are they buckets that reflect where the Urban County Policy Board sees them wanting the county to go in for home and CDBGs, and then Rebecca and I and Noreen, on an annual basis when we're doing the solicitations, we'll need that feedback of this year in our, if we're doing public facilities this year, this is the kind of solicitation we want to see in public facilities. So it's not a general open, anything that is eligible under public facilities can apply. We can solicit for, this year we want homeless activities that support shelter. You know, this year we want domestic violence supports. And also, or if we're talking like housing and home ownership, you know, the Urban County Policy Board could could give us guidance of, we want to set aside this amount of funding in this solicitation for home ownership or for TBRA, or, that's the kind of guidance that I think we can get on an annual basis. But right now, the overall feedback of, are these the buckets we want? Are these the goals that sit right with the priorities of the Urban County Policy Board? And Elizabeth, is there anything that you think I've misstated or that you would like to edit?
No, I think that is definitely what we're looking at. The needs and goals are included in the consolidated plan again. So this is as general or as specific as HUD really wants you to get. What are the big buckets that you will fund? And these are the 5 that we've identified through consultation and input from multiple sources, as well as working with staff, because it also has to be doable. But pretty much everything can live, everything that you could do could live in these 5 goals. It would be rare that you would see something that couldn't. And then it is down to the next slide. The projects. So this is where on an annual basis, and this has already been done for 2025 because your discrete activities are already approved for 2025. And everything that you've approved for 2025 can live here. So the projects are kind of the annual action plan bucket. And this is where in subsequent years, do we have it right here? And in subsequent years, the Urban County Policy Board, like Michael said, can really set targets and priorities and receive applications that meet those targeted priorities.
Elizabeth, can I ask you a question? I think I'm asking it because it may be on the minds of some of the Urban County Policy Board members as well. So with the goals under the projects, at this point, do we need to specify the number of how many houses we want to construct or preserve over the next 5 years, or how many households that we want to serve with tenant-based rental assistance? Or, do we have to get into that kind of specificity at this point with the consolidated plan?
We do get into that. We work with the county to come up with estimates, and that's really all they are. They are estimates. And, it really does help to inform some of those future projects that you might be looking at. And at the same time, it's flexible. You don't have to, we try to set them to be realistic on the low side, if that makes sense, because I'd always rather meet the goals than to not meet the goals set. And, so that is in there, and that can change, and it does change from year to year. So working with the county staff in the future, so years 2, 3, 4, and 5, as you set your priorities for projects that you want to see applications for, you can help set the number of households that you want to serve, or the number of public facilities that you want to assist with. So that is something that the Urban County Policy Board can work on with county staff. And because your activities for next year are already approved, we're working with staff to make sure we will have some good realistic numbers in those projects.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, and then could you just briefly, so steps forward at this point, we said in May this will be submitted.
Yes, on May 6th, it goes before the County Council for approval, and then it will be submitted. It could be in May, it could be in June before we submit, as we work through any budget changes and numbers, but right around then for the program year that is set to start on July 1. And if we're
Great.
missing something, I would love to, if we've missed something, if it doesn't encompass the things that the Urban County Policy Board would like to see addressed, if we've missed something under those projects or goals, please let us know.
I do want to add in, so right now, posted online is the draft document that
Yes.
is a consolidated plan. And I think we can make sure that Noreen, you have access to it, but I'll make sure Noreen sends you the link so you can look at it. It's not an easy document to read. It's really pre-formatted for IDIS, the Integrated Dispersing Information System that HUD uses for submission. I think most useful, the content is reflected in this presentation on those slides on the needs, the goals, the projects, and the activities. So just, by all means, please go and look online at the draft plan. And if you have any feedback looking at those slides on goals, needs, the most useful feedback we can get now is, do those buckets make sense? Do those needs, goals, projects fit what the Urban County Policy Board would like to see for home and CDBG over the next 4 years, which is what we have left in this 5-year period. And so we can adapt, because it's not too late. Like, even though it's posted, the draft, we can make changes to the draft, like between now and whenever the council approves it, actually even after that, prior to submission to HUD.
Yes. Especially prior to council approval, it is absolutely possible to make some changes. If we have not captured what you would like to see, and you are so correct when you say the draft is formatted for HUD use, not really for public use, and that we have taken directly from that draft and put in here information for you to review. So if we are missing something, and on the very last slide, my email is on there, and I would love it if you would email Rebecca or Noreen or myself and let us know any feedback you have if you think that we should include something that you don't see.
Okay,
or take something out that you do see.
Will the board have one more touch on this prior to submission to the council?
We don't have another meeting scheduled between now and mid-May.
All right, so that's no then, I take it.
Not as structured right now.
Okay.
I mean, if
All right.
if the board were like, we need to have a touch before the council sees it, we would, make accommodations
Okay.
one way or the other.
Well, just speaking on behalf of myself, I look at this list and I agree with the list, but I think what I would like to know is what projects may not have been included that are potential projects, so that we could see whether we thought that that's a priority, if there are any.
Councilor, this is Rebecca. So if the board approves the buckets that we have here, the project that we have here, so housing, neighborhood improvements and public facilities, economic and asset development, public services, and administration, that really will cover just about anything that we have seen. We can tie it back to one of these projects. We have done most of this historically through the last several consolidated plans. So anything that we've done under housing would fall here. Anything we've done under neighborhood improvements and public facilities falls under that category. Our economic development project activities falls there. The only one that is new that would give the board more flexibility in the use of our CDBG funds is adding in the option to do public services. Otherwise, everything that we've been doing would already fit underneath these this project level. So that's what we're really looking for today is, does the Urban County Policy Board agree with having these 5 levels of projects for us to move forward with the consolidated plan?
Okay, thank you for that. I think that pretty much answered my question there. Essentially, we still have full flexibility to work on this in the coming months prior to the next year's process.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I think the most powerful moment in terms of influencing next year's process is would be September for the Urban County Policy Board meeting then, because that's prior to our issuing the RFA guidelines to the community. And that can give us like very directed priorities in what we're soliciting for in 2026. And the same process like the next year. And if we want to have a process for annually getting guidance for the next year's submission, I think as staff, we'd be absolutely open to doing that. But as Rebecca said, I don't see anything here that would exclude anything that has previously been solicited. The public services goal, that's capped at 15%. So it is limited in how much, that's still $75,000, less than $200,000 that would be available for public services. But that's new discretion for types of activities that the Urban County Policy Board could give us direction on that we've not been able to receive applications of that type in the past. So the difference between this consolidated plan and previous consolidated plans is that actually you have a little bit more discretion.
Great. That sounds good. Kind of one of the things I was thinking of is I think it would be beneficial to have kind of a more work session environment for the board where we sit down and look at all the 2 different sources of funding, and we look at the different requirements for each and look to see where we have flexibility in direction, and we work together as a board to look at those and I wouldn't set exact like numbers or priorities, but we would say, when you're looking at applications, maybe we weigh this particular type of application higher because this is higher on our priorities list in terms of community need.
Yeah, one area where like specific numbers and guidance would also be really helpful is when we're looking at how much funding you want to dedicate to a specific type of project.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I was looking at. Any other thoughts or comments?
We will also be meeting in June, and we can start that conversation so that staff can get ready to do the applications. We need to give our application software plenty of time to make any edits to the system. So I will set that for a June conversation to see where we want to go to get that started for the next request for application round. Councilor Victoria Ferrer has been raising their hand, patiently waiting to make a comment. Victoria?
Sorry, we can't see all of the hands. Go ahead, Victoria. My apologies.
No, that's okay. I've been raising it and then putting it down, raising it because every time I want to say something, you've been stealing it, Miss Chairman. So thank you. You've actually been answering a lot of my questions. I guess I'll just ask this one. It's like you did answer the question already that we are not going to be having another meeting prior to county council addressing this and looking at it, which is May 6th. However, I just wanted to confirm that. Did you say in July is when we will start working on this for the next year?
So this is Rebecca. So we will have a meeting in June. We already have one scheduled for June, and we can have a discussion on where we would like to put estimated amounts of funding into each of the buckets, into the project levels. And do we want to move forward with, say, public services? This is a new project area that we haven't done before. So we can make a final decision for the next round of applications. Do we want to open up applications for public services? So we will have a more in-depth discussion at the June meeting. And then if we need to, we can finalize things at the September meeting.
Okay, and then I'll just finalize with a comment, which is looking at all of the goals and the projects. I was very excited to see that one of the goals is TBRA. I definitely feel that our we definitely need to be focusing a lot on that area. And so I'm thankful to see that that's one of the concerns that are on the listed on the goals. And looking forward to the June meeting where we can be talking more about collaborating what we all feel would be the services that we might want to be touching on. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That actually generated one last question for me. And, you know, if we put public services goal and those projects in there, does that obligate us to fund that portion of it?
No, it does
No.
not make any obligation to put funding towards that. It just gives us the opportunity to, if the board would like to move in that direction. Whereas previously, when the board has brought up these types of activities in the past, we have not been able to move forward with them because it requires a substantial amendment to the consolidated plan process and requires public comment and things like that. So it makes it a little bit difficult and extends the time frame for when we need to get things out. This will give us that flexibility and the opportunity to fund those if the board sees fit.
Great. Thank you. I think
Mayor Cole also looked like he wanted to make a suggestion.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Mayor.
Oh, I did? I'm sorry. I don't have a suggestion to make at this time, actually.
Okay, great. I think we have fleshed this out. Do you have any last comments, Elizabeth, before we move on?
No, I think this has been a great discussion, and I will be excited to hear from county staff and be a fly on the wall in years 2 through 5 to see how you move through this process. And definitely feel free to email me if you think of something after the meeting that you wish you had shared, and I will be happy to have a chat. Thank you
Great.
so much for your time.
Thank you for being with us today, and thank you for working through this for the county.
And I'd just also like to thank Elizabeth and Urban County Policy Board. And please do, if you have any feedback, please send it in. I can, very sincerely state, what we want as staff is that, like, what this framework for what the next 5 years will be to reflect what you would like this program to operate. We are constrained, like this is a very structured program and we are constrained by HUD requirements and timelines. But within that framework, we want it to be what this community needs, not what HUD structure imposes.
Great. Thank you very much. We will move forward to item number 4, which is homeless housing local plan update.
All right, good morning. And this is Michael Torres with Clark County Community Services, and I will be running through that. I simply want to give an update to the Urban County Policy Board as an awareness, situational awareness of other things, parallel efforts that are happening in the community. We being Clark County is required to also submit a 5-year local homeless housing plan with the state. And that process is taking place right now. Our Chair Young is the county representative to the task force that is actually helping guide that local plan process. And I just wanted to, make the Urban County Policy Board aware that, there is a parallel 5-year plan that applies to the state and local funding that the county receives and distributes to the community that is designated for homeless activities. And it will be submitted to the state it will be approved by the county in the late fall, and it will be submitted to the state by December, and we will start reporting on that plan by December 2025 and every year after that. So the process of this of this local plan coming together is we have to notice the community on the plan development. That's taken place in press release and been taking place online, and we've had various community meetings that have already started talking about it. I set up a task force where there are designated stakeholders that are representative of different entities in the community. And that's the steering committee. And between now and October 2025, we're going to have different focus groups in different areas of the county and with different targeted communities with lived experience to give us plan on that. Between June and October, we're going to have plan development. And prior to being submitted to approval of the county, the plan will be briefed and presented and feedback solicited from the Ending Community Homelessness Organization, the ECHO, which is a convening of the different cities and county here and a couple other stakeholders here in Clark County. And then the county council will approve the plan and it will go to the state. Next slide, please. So the requirements in this 5-year local plan, one is it provides an estimate of our existing local needs, and that they're using data from our homeless management information system. They're using data from surveys, and they're using expenditures, inventorying the different funding sources that could be eligible for use in homelessness. That includes funding sources that are not designated explicitly for use in homeless activities, but can be used in homeless activities. For example, the House Bill 1406 funds, the Mental Health Sales Tax Fund, property levies, things like that. So that will be the survey existing fund sources. The estimates of emergency housing needs over the next 5 years. Those will primarily be based on the state numbers that are provided to different counties in support of their comprehensive plans. It's going to put some prioritization criteria for capital projects, if any specific capital projects are called for by name. And there's also going to be, all of that's going to be based on a lot of public engagement. And if as we engage people with lived experience, we are also expected to compensate them for participating in the process. Next slide, please.
Can I have a question real quick on this? So when we survey existing funding, are we looking at just county resources, or are we looking at what the other jurisdictions may also be collecting in different funding sources?
We are primarily county resources. And the reason I'm saying primarily is because there are some resources, for example, House Bill 1406 bill, which that's the county is receiving that. There may be cities in the county that are also receiving their own portion and using it in whatever way they're doing. I don't believe in terms of the revenue calculation of how much is being brought into the county. The ones received by the other cities are being counted. That's my understanding right now. Thank you. Next slide, please. So this just goes to show you, I said earlier that there was there had to be designated key representation in the steering committee as we engage and develop this plan. And this just shows you who are the stakeholders that are in the steering committee. And the green that you see there is they are all represented in the steering committee as it exists. Its first meeting was last Wednesday. And we're also planning, looking at those groups as we do workshops and focus groups moving forward. Next slide, please. So the plan needs to accomplish certain things. These are the objectives that you can read in front of you. So, equitable, accountable, transparent homeless crisis response system that includes having metrics, tracking what activities are, tracking who's being served, tracking what those outcomes are, and reporting on them to the public and to the state. Strengthening homeless service provider workforce. This is an objective that is somewhat abstract in the state guidance right now. I think different communities are going to approach it in a different way. What we do know is that across the board throughout the state, and it's very true here in Clark County, we have a workforce crisis with our service providers. As an example, SHARE has had a 53% staff turnover rate over the past 2 years. That's the kind of things that we are dealing with. About a month ago, I had a meeting with our local service providers that were doing eviction prevention rental assistance using our EPRAP funds from the state. And we were trying to increase the expenditures of, increase the prevention rental assistance going out into the community. And we were talking to service providers of what needed to happen for them to do that, because we wanted to give them more funds. And to my surprise, there was a lot of resistance to actually receiving more funds to get that additional rental assistance out. And the main reason was they did not have the staffing capacity. And it's very, very hard for them to fill vacancies right now because of the environment that we are in, including like the national dialogue. People do not want to get into social services, and people are getting burnt out, the ones that are in social services right now. So preventing episodes of homelessness, we need interventions that are effective. Prioritize assistance based on greatest barriers. That means having common assessments tools, prioritizing based on vulnerability, really targeting who we want to, or who needs services, because there are not going to be enough resources to go around. And then seek to house everyone in a stable setting that meets their needs. That talks about the supports. It's not just about putting people in a shelter or putting people in a house. It's about making sure that the things that are barriers to their long-term stability are also being addressed in the services that we're funding. Next slide, please. So this is just like when the steering committee is going to be meeting, and this is I got these slides from Eco Northwest. That's the consultant that's helping us with the 5-year local homeless plan. So that today was last week on Wednesday. Next slide. And this is just, in comparison, the project stage is just the steps that are going to be taken between now and the county approval of the 5-year plan. The next slide. I think that's it. And that is it. Any questions before we go on to item 5?
Just a quick question from me. Like, we were a couple slides ago, we were talking about the different data points. What I've heard about this, and this may be incorrect, but do all entities supporting this, offering homelessness support, are they using the same data sources, or does everyone kind of have their own?
Thank you for that question. Everyone that is publicly funded at this point by Clark County and the City of Vancouver is using the same system, and that's the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS. A lot of entities that are doing services related to homelessness that are not publicly funded are also using HMIS. So the data that we have on the services, the populations, and the expenses related to those services and the outcomes is, we actually have very good data for this community in terms of what's taking place and and what the results of that are.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That's helpful.
Any other questions or comments before we move on? Okay, thank you, Michael. We'll move on to item 5, which is public comment during meetings discussion. Was that Mayor Cole that brought that up in the last meeting that we had?
I don't think I brought that
It
up.
was
No.
Mayor McCoy. That's right. Yes. So I think this is a great question. Rebecca, did you want to go ahead and get this kicked off?
Yeah, so at the last meeting, Mayor McCoy brought up a discussion point for this meeting to see if we wanted to move public comment earlier in the meeting in the agenda time for future meetings. Our current practice is we allow 3 minutes for public comment at the end of the meeting, and it's specific to topics that we've talked about during the meeting. And Mayor McCoy was wondering if it would be a better place to have those public comments at the beginning of the meeting, and also to be specific to agenda items. So we thought we'd bring it to the board for a quick discussion to see if that's how we would like to move forward, or if we want to retain the public comment at the end of the meeting.
Victoria.
Thank you, Chair. I actually watched that meeting and I would agree with Mayor McCoy, and I'm not being biased at all, that I believe that citizen comments should be held at the beginning. I don't know that they should be restrictive to the agendas, just because I think that, I mean, I'm new to this, so I don't know how many, people, community members actually come in and speak during your meetings, but I've always liked the idea to give the public the opportunity to share some concerns that they've seen in their day-to-day walks of life.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? Yep, Mayor Cole.
Yeah, I'll just say I agree with Victoria on that, and maybe my caveat would be like if you're going to provide public comment, especially to a board like this, that it just be germane or like relevant to the scope of what our work is, and not anything. So if we go away from items on this specific items on the agenda, it would just have to be something that is kind of germane to what we discuss here for this board.
Agreed.
Any other comments? Okay, I would say I agree with that. I think it is with an absolute minimum when we make funding recommendations. I think that public comment should be at the beginning of the meeting. I see advantages to both, honestly, and I have been in a committee at one time where we had public comment at the beginning of the meeting and at the end. That might be a bit excessive, but I do agree also that we should, I don't want to exclude anybody that might have relevant information to present to the board just because that particular item was not on the agenda. But I also do agree with the scope of the Urban County Policy Board. We don't need to be talking about fluoride in our water and, things like that. So I would be in favor of including language that restricted it to, issues relevant to the Urban County Policy Board. But yeah, I would definitely favor moving to the beginning of the meeting too. So I know that's 3 of us at this point. Anybody else want to chime in? Should we just do like a thumbs up here, or should we do a formal motion and a vote to move the public comments to the beginning of the meeting?
I think an informal approval is good. We will, staff will put together a slide for public comments that kind of outlines the topics that would be allowable during public comment to have, and we'll do that after introductions, but before we accept minutes from the previous meeting. Does that sound how the board would like us to proceed?
Sure. And then Victoria, just question, you're the one that originally suggested having the topic be much more open. Are you okay with that kind of constriction that we put on there, that it be relevant to the scope of the UCPB?
No, I fully agree with that.
Okay. All right, so we have 3 in favor. Is there anybody opposed to that? To any of those items? Okay. All right,
Thank you.
great. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and move to item number 6, program updates.
Hello, Rebecca again. So we just wanted to give you a couple of updates on what's happening so far with the program. So as was mentioned during the presentation earlier, there is a full year continuing resolution that was passed March 14th. What that indicates is that funding levels should be the same or very similar to what we received last year. There is a possibility that the amounts don't match exactly as new entitlement jurisdictions come into play. Some of them leave the program, that type of thing. So we do anticipate that there's going to be some small fluctuation in the amount that we predicted we would have based on fiscal year 24 for our fiscal year 25 program. So we will see some slight adjustments to the awards, but there shouldn't be anything major. We have heard through our national associations that HUD is anticipating to notify all of the entitlement agencies of the funding awards by May 15th at the latest. And then we will make those adjustments quite quickly to the action plan and the consolidated plan and get those submitted as quickly as possible to HUD for approval, because as mentioned in our previous presentation earlier, our funding year, our program year does start July 1. So we do try to get that going as quickly as we possibly can. Once we submit our consolidated plan and action plan, HUD has 45 days to approve it. And so we still want to make sure that we get that moving quickly. We also wanted to let you know that, let's see. Oh, yes. So that's everything under program updates. And then we do have a conversation under the other. Sorry. So under our other topic today, we just last week found out that Chairman Mike Flood and Ranking Member Emmanuel Cleaver have put out a request to CDBG and home entitlement agencies and national associations to get information about the home and the CDBG programs with a response due date of April 25th. So Clark County staff put together a response that we will be sending today or tomorrow to Chairman Flood and Ranking Member Cleaver. And we wanted to inform the Urban County Policy Board because we know some of these conversations have come up during our previous meetings. So one of the topics that we have in our letter is to increase the public service cap. And that is because we hear from a lot of other entitlement agencies that do public services that the 15% cap just really isn't sufficient to meet the needs of doing social services in the different communities. I've also put together some recommendations for the tenant-based rental assistance program. Those recommendations include expanding what the home-funded aspects of the program can pay for. Right now, they're restricted to rent deposits and utilities. And then the CDBG side pays for very restrictive case management, which is specific. It has to be housing focused case management to apply under the housing services eligibility matrix code for CDBG. And we would like to see that expanded to be able to provide more wraparound services. So we could work towards or pay the nonprofit organizations for the case management services that they're doing to help alleviate all of the other barriers that our households are having to meet their housing stability goals. And then we are asking that they increase the amount of home funding that can be used for deposits. Right now, the home program caps deposit assistance at 2 times the amount of rent for 1 month. And we have been seeing significant increases by landlords in the amount of deposits that they would like to have, especially with our households that have more barriers to their housing stability. So we're asking for an increase there. And then there's another odd component of the program that states that we cannot reimburse a nonprofit organization providing tenant-based rental assistance programs any CDBG funds until they have spent at least $1 of home funds. Because home funds are restricted to deposits, rents, and utilities, that means a household has to get housed before we can pay for any of the costs that it took the nonprofit to get that household into housing. That includes application fees, it includes staff time to work through getting maybe documents that they are missing or working through barriers that they had to housing. So they can't bill us for that until they've got that household housed. We also see that households with significant barriers to housing stability have to go through multiple application fees. So our nonprofits are accruing all of those costs. It can also cause an issue when we are at the end of a contract cycle where they are accruing application fees and housing staff time in, say, December, and the household doesn't get housed until January, where it's a different contract period outside the period of performance for the original time. And so they're not able to ask for reimbursement on that. So we are asking for some minor tweaks to the tenant-based rental assistance program. We are also asking that they remove the Build America, Buy America, or BABA requirement for the programs, mostly because it's complex and there's not been enough guidance on how we can meet that requirement for the reporting. We're also seeing tariffs being put in place, which are increasing costs and for bringing things in. The Build America, Buy America, the intent of that program is great. We love the idea of doing more locally, which we do a lot of the purchasing locally. But the project or the whole requirement itself has not been really thought out and is causing a lot of impediments for our affordable housing and our neighborhood improvement projects. Some of our cities have been already working with the BABA rule through other federal funding, like transportation funding, and they have been indicating that it's been very difficult to get through all of those requirements. And then finally, we are requesting that they take a look at the environmental review requirements, specifically around small infrastructure projects, our neighborhood improvement projects, where it elevates from an environmental review level of a categorically excluded subject to, or a CEST level review, and then elevates to an environmental assessment where we have to look into the 5 different categories, including the impact on climate change and energy for these small projects. So those increase if there's a change in capacity over 20%, or if there's infrastructure being added where there wasn't any previously. So for example, when we add new stormwater where there hasn't been any stormwater improvements done before, that would elevate it to an environmental assessment. When we add a lot of sidewalks to an area, that elevates to that environmental assessment level. So we are asking them to review and look at that and exempt our small neighborhood improvement projects from elevating to an environmental assessment level and keep them at a CEST level review. Staff has that letter ready to go, and we would be happy to share it with the Urban County Policy Board if you would be interested in taking that to your cities and submitting something similar. The National Community Development Association and the National Association of County Community Economic Development, or NACED, those national associations are also both planning on submitting responses to Chairman Flood and Ranking Member Cleaver in response to those requests for information. Before I go on to the next topic, are there questions or discussion that the board would like to have?
Just would like to say those are excellent recommendations.
Councilor Farrer?
Yes, I just have a question in regards to the rental assistance programs. And I know that an individual who's seeking rental assistance they have to, I would assume, with the that they have to do maybe what there's an annual requirement, and that kind of takes a little bit of those application fees, right? They that people have to um, continue annually to submit documentation or an application to show proof that they are still following under, or they still fall underneath the requirements for the, I guess, the severely cost burden.
So
Is that a
each,
fair
yeah,
assessment, or can you give me some more details on that? Because and the only reason why I ask this is because, I mean, I love the program. I love how, that we're able to help those in need. I also am aware, like all of us are, that there are people who abuse the system. And I would just like to make sure that we're, being accountable for where all those funds go, and that we don't have people that are missing out on this great opportunity to seek aid for rental assistance because somebody else might be abusing it. I will say, finish with this and allow you time to speak. Sorry, that this isn't just coming out of the air. I did do a walkthrough with another housing assistance program, and they informed me that once they were on the program, that yes, even though they do annual updates from their tenants who are receiving rental assistance, they don't remove people from the program. And to me, that just was mouth dropping, because there's people living in their cars because they don't have the funding to, provide housing for themselves. And then yet you may have people that are abusing this program.
yeah. So there are several different federal programs that provide housing, different types of housing assistance. The tenant-based rental assistance program specifically that we operate runs on a rapid rehousing model, which means that to get into the program, they have to be currently experiencing homelessness, either living in a place not meant for habitability or in shelter. And then our housing providers can operate their program. We provide flexibility that they operate their program how they see fit. But there is at least annually, they have to do an income recertification to verify that households are earning below 60% of the area median income. So they do that at least annually. However, other funding that our providers receive have more restrictive or more frequent recertifications. Some are as every 3 months. And so a lot of the times our housing providers opt to do that flow. So they have some consistency between the programs, the different funding sources that they are receiving. So most of our rapid rehousing programs through tenant-based rental assistance funding, they do every 3 months for the income certification, not all of them. So they have to do it at least annually, but often it's more like every 3 months to verify that they meet that 60%. If the household income increases over 60%, they have to be exited from the program very quickly. We cannot then provide any more rent assistance to them, so they rapidly transition them on their own. But they've been working. The rapid rehousing model is meant to rapidly help a household gain stability without promising that they're going to receive assistance going into the future, so that we can move households from homelessness into housing, into stable housing, and then off the program as quickly as possible.
Okay, great. I appreciate that clarification. Really, I do. That which brings me to another question though. So what is underneath the TABR? Sorry to take everybody's time up. I guess I'm going to be doing some homework after this meeting. Is what is the actual, because you had mentioned homeless or shelter. It just takes me now back to a walkthrough that I just did in the jail too. And one of the concerns that was brought up is how if somebody's in the jail for just a short period of time, and that that is not even, that's not considered homeless because they actually are in a bed. So then that makes me wonder, what is the definition of homeless underneath the TABR? Because then not only that, but because not only because of the walkthrough of the prison, but also I'm assuming, but I don't want to assume here, that shelters would also be included as, or, and then the other one actually that just comes to mind is couch surfing as well. So what, can I ask what the definition of
Yeah.
homelessness? Thank
So
you.
the definition that we use is literally homeless. It's HUD's definition of literally homeless, and that means anyone that's living in a place not meant for human habitation. So a car, outdoors, in a tent, in an abandoned home, things like that. It includes shelter. So any type of sheltering that we have where it's really not an individual's long-term permanent housing. It includes transitional housing programs because they have to move from that when they're done with the program. And it includes victims of domestic violence. Those are fleeing domestic violence. When we're talking about institutions of care, foster services, going through rehab, mental health or substance use rehab, jails, things like that, we look at what their housing was before they entered the system of care that they're looking at, that they're in currently. But after, and Michael, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe after 90 days, that can change. So if they were housed, but they lost their housing while they were in jail, for example, then they would be considered literally homeless. But I'll let Michael clarify that because I know he's a little bit more aware of those definitions than I am.
No, you are correct. So it really depends on what their status was before they entered the system of care and how long they've been in that system of care.
So somebody that's experiencing, like say somebody who's in a mental health facility due to, obviously mental health, they usually would be seeking, I'm trying to think how long they're usually, I mean, it depends on what the mental health court, establishes the care that's needed. Does the person need time in the facility? So is that something that this organization would be working with that team that's at these mental health facilities?
Yes, so all publicly funded dollars go through our coordinated entry system. So anyone that is identified by any of our nonprofit providers in the community that is in need of housing assistance would go to the coordinated entry and help get an assessment done. And then they would look at what their housing status is through that coordinated entry process, which will include different systems of care. We have our housing providers and our coordinated entry system have relationships with the different systems of care to make sure that housing assessments are getting done for anyone that is in need of housing that's currently in one of those systems.
Thank you.
Excellent questions. One thing I might add is when we have the discussion looking at TBRA versus permanent housing, do we have the flexibility of the 60% AMI, or is that something that's solidified by HUD?
That is a HUD requirement. So 60% is the maximum we can go.
That's the maximum, but we could go lower.
Yes.
Okay, I would be interested in a conversation about that. Because there's a massive shortage. There's not enough people receiving this funding. And I think that there are people at 60% AMI, especially given AMI for us is artificially high because of the multitude of area that area median income is determined by. I do think that there are people that can make it on, it's tight, 100% acknowledge it's tight, but if there is somebody that can make it at 60% AMI, I don't want to exclude somebody that's at 50 or at 40 or something like that because somebody at 60 is still using those resources. So, and I don't necessarily think we'd change, but I would encourage us having a discussion on that.
Yeah, I can let you know that the majority of households served by the TBRA programs are 0 to 30% area median income, because of course we track that information. There's very few people that come in over 30%, and I don't know if we have any households that are even earning over 50%. Because we use the coordinated entry model, we are looking at the hardest, the households with the most barriers to housing stability to serve with our publicly funded programs. So we tend to see the people that are had longer stays in homelessness or more frequent homelessness episodes and higher barriers to that housing stability, including the lowest of the incomes. But we can absolutely take a look at that if we wanted to adjust that. We work really closely with the City of Vancouver and their tenant-based rental assistance program to try to mirror the programs for the entire system, so it makes it easier for all of our housing providers to operate this program. It's really a technical program, and there's a lot of odd restrictions that come into play when you're operating a HUD-funded TBRA program. And so we would want to also talk with them to see, try to keep in line with how they're operating their program. Also, I can add that to one of our future agenda topics.
Yeah, it sounds like the way I envisioned it is already happening, but sure, if we could touch that, that would be great.
Yeah, I can bring data to the next meeting so you can see what
Thank you.
is happening in our system.
Greatly appreciated. Thank you.
There's also a recording of our our February meeting on the Urban County Policy Board website that we do an overview of the rapid rehousing model of assistance for tenant-based rental assistance. And I'm happy to forward that out to you, Councillor Farrer, so that you can take a look at how our program is operated.
Yes, I appreciate that.
Any other questions before I move on?
I would just like to say thank you to Chairman Young. I appreciate exactly what you said, wanting to focus more on the 0 to 30%. And also, I think it was you, Rebecca, can't see you, for clarifying that that actually is our focus here, is more on those falling under the 50% versus those that are over the 60%. I would repeat exactly what you said, Chairman Young, that even though it is tight, I would like to see more of our county definitely focusing on the very low or the severely cost burden populace for this board.
All right, if there's nothing else, I have mentioned before, but National Community Development Week is coming up April 21st through 25th. We are doing a combined meeting with the Vancouver staff and meeting with Representative Marie Glusenkamp Perez's staff to kind of give an overview of what we do with our CDBG and home funds. We're putting together some data about how we've used the funds in the past, priority areas, things like that. And we'll be sending out social media posts throughout the week so that we can let the community be aware of National Community Development Week. We have done proclamations in the past. Unfortunately, we don't have a council meeting happening that week, so we decided not to do a proclamation this year, but we'll hope to do one in the future. And if the small cities are interested in any information, I'm happy to send some of that information to you, that if you would like to put out social media posts on your own platforms.
Is that something that the little city guys could come and partake in?
You know, I am actually not the lead person putting the discussion together with Representative Perez, and so I can look into that and let the board know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, it looks like we're moving on to public comment. Is there anybody from the public that would wish to make a comment to the board today? Do we see any hands? Okay, it doesn't. Just there, and for the good of the order, I did have one quick please bear with me, topic to bring up. And Michael and I had a discussion about it shortly before the meeting. And that is that there is a building in the city of Battleground that the county owns that was funded by CDBG funds. That it is an interesting property. It's an old bank that has been used for purposes of WIC primarily, I believe, and it's being administered through CMAR. And the building is in terrible shape. Requires somewhere around $1.7 million in repair to bring it up to speed. And the county is looking at this point of potentially selling the building to CMAR for $1 or selling it to CMAR or any other individual at market price. But the big ticket here, and this is why I bring it up at the board, is that those funds, regardless of how much it sells for, would go back into the CDBG program. And they may not even stay local, from my understanding. They might kick back up to HUD. So if I don't want to bring the whole thing for discussion, but the county council is looking at making a decision on that soon. So if anybody has any input to provide, please send that to the council in an email so that we can be aware of any of your thoughts in that decision. Michael, do you have anything to add to that?
No, and really, this is a public facilities. Michelle Schuster is leading the disposition of the property and what the best way ahead. We're providing technical advice of what CDBG wise the program can and cannot allow.
Is there anything else for the good of the order? All right, thank you, everybody. We will see you next meeting, June 9th, 2025 at 9:30. Everybody have a great day. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
See you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.